So, Madam Toastmaster, thank you. And I've not so much stolen, but I've decided to take advantage of the third topic today, which is if you want to be boring, be boring. So I'm going to say thank you for permission from speaker number 3. Hopefully that isn't what happens, but I suppose I can turn out around. If you want to think it's boring, then that's up to you. Question: what language do you think in?
It's already English.
Ukrainian.
Okay.
English.
Joshua?
I don't know.
I don't think.
He knows me too well. It's a trick question. It's an easy question. Mixed. Mixed. Okay. Right. I believe. Thank you for your answers, and in some cases, thank you for your honesty. I believe that, with some exceptions, we think. Certainly, we think in a language, but we think in a language which is our native language, and that which we've grown up with, and thought being something quite deep inside the psyche. When people hear an expression, they add a visualization which comes from their own background and their own culture. And this really is the concept that I'm going to be dealing with. Quite an abstract, a difficult concept. And I'm really putting my personal take on it, and also some practical suggestions for what this all means and how you can actually get some benefit from it. So here's a little exercise. What is it that people do at the end of the day when they're very tired, they've got nothing else to do?
Rest.
Sorry?
They rest.
They rest. Okay, anything else?
They watch TV.
They watch TV. Okay, they carry on working, but in some cases they will
Read a book.
Sorry?
Read a book.
Read a book. Okay.
Sleep.
We haven't got to the one I'm going for.
Take a shower.
They take
Contemplate.
After that,
Hibernate.
Introspect.
Sorry?
Get dressed, go to bed.
that's what I was looking for. Go to bed. Okay, they go to bed. I know entrepreneurs can never go to bed. Okay? Be honest, you do sometimes. So my point is that an English speaker, I wasn't going to call you English, an English speaker, someone who's brought up with that in that culture, says, go to bed. What time do you go to bed? I go to bed at midnight. Sometimes I go to bed very late. Sometimes I never go to bed, but it's go to bed. Now what about the Russian speaker? What does the Russian say?
Спать. Иду спать.
Ложусь спать.
Иду спать, ложусь.
Иду спать.
Ложусь спать.
Ложусь спать. That's what I'm looking for. Ложиться спать. Lie down, go to sleep. So this really illustrates my point. The Englishman, and that's me, when I go to bed, so go to bed to me is I get up off the sofa, I switch off the television, don't have a remote control, switch off the television, lock the windows, put the cat out, put the milk bottles outside, switch the lights off downstairs, go upstairs, go to the bathroom, blah 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 blah, go into my bedroom and go to bed. Okay, what does the Russian do?
Have some vodka.
He lies down and goes to sleep. So it's the same. It means the same, but it's a different picture, isn't it? And that's a sort of a silly but very basic illustration that what we're saying is you have to, when you're trying to explain a concept to somebody, you need to start with a visualization in that person's culture, in their language. So, future perfect continuous. This is probably the most complicated linguistic construction, and that's why I picked it. And I first came across this idea when I was in Moscow, and I translated somebody's PhD thesis, and they were working on a method of teaching English grammar to Russians, and I stole the idea. We're going back a few years now. So, an abstract concept, the English tense system. Let's take the continuous, that's the verb form that has ing on the end. Ing. Okay, and I'm probably only going to use the verb read. So if we take the present continuous, I am reading. Okay, I'm keeping it simple. Everybody with me? Yeah, Raphael. Okay. Yeah. I am reading. Okay. What's that in Russian?
Читаю.
Я читаю. Got it? Make a note. Я читаю. Okay. So there you go. So out of interest, the simple present is I read with no in on the end. I read. Okay. What's that in Russian?
Я читаю.
Я читаю. See the problem? So if I'm trying to explain either one way or the other, I've got to do some extra work. So this is what the point is. Because we've already got a challenge. It's the same word, the same sound, and it means something very, very different. So, what's the answer? The concept needs to be fully discussed, I believe, in the native language, in the other person's language. And I don't intend to sort of switch over to Russian now. So I'd like you to consider that what I'll be saying will be discussing with Russians in Russian. The suggestion then is you start with something which is probably not universal right around the world, but I think in Europe it probably is. Timeline with now in the middle and far future and far past. Onto that line we can superimpose any verb. I've got the green, I'm waiting for the next one, thank you. So for example, present continuous, what are you reading? What are you reading? What are you reading? What are you reading? So that was one example, reading now. What are you reading this week? That's two different things. So when I'm speaking to Russian, I would say, right now, that thing that I can see in front of you, this week, which book are you reading, for example? So it could be right now, or it could be these days. The next one we've got is past continuous. What were you reading? What were you reading? I saw you on the bus yesterday. You were reading something. What were you reading? So that was at a point in time. But it could also be. Oh no, future continuous. The next one. What will you be reading? Once again, as we had the example there of я читаю meaning several things. In Russian, it's very often these are the same. Я буду читать, but it means something very different. So what will you be reading? And now we're getting into, when you fly, on your way to America, what will you be reading? Does that make sense? Probably not, but it could be while something else is going on. What will you be reading? The future perfect continuous. This is a fun one. Because the point that I would make here is that it exists, it's a structure, but English people don't often use it. So the English example is, by the time you get home, I will have been reading that book for 2 years. So there you are, you say, right, that's far future, thinking back. And I can see I have been talking far too long, for longer than I intended. The conclusion that I would suggest is we need to talk a bit more on this subject. But if you want to connect with someone else's thoughts, you really have to be prepared to get inside their head. And I think that's enough for the time being.